Alright guys, so I'm here to talk about the Game Awards, the 2017 Game Awards, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards, formerly the VGAs they used to be done with Spike, I believe, but then 4 years ago he split off. Now, I actually didn't watch last year's Game Awards because the one before that, I made a video on that, the 2015 ones, and I just didn't want to watch them ever again. But I watched this one because Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro, and Norman Reedus were all going to be at this, and you kind of know what that means, and it was true, and I'll get to that at the end. But first, just talking about the show generally, I think this is one of the better ones that I've seen, but I mean, that's not saying much. I still had to, like, play Destiny in windowed mode, grinding out that Osiris bullshit while I was watching this. And they did the Sony Live Orchestra thing, and they tried to up the presentation and stuff, but in terms of, like, watching it, still some cringy moments, still kind of dumb, filled with ads. The thing was really, filled to the brim with ads, and this show went on for a while. I believe it was, like, 2.5 hours, maybe. Quite a long show. You had all these weird promotions with, like, eBay deals constantly. It was just very strange, and I know they have to fund the show. I'm very well aware of how that works, but I think they can do a little bit better in that regard. But, I don't really care about... I don't expect the show to be, entertaining. Personally, I've given up on that. I do like to see some announcements and some news and stuff like that, some premieres. And in that regard, this was actually a pretty solid event, I have to admit. Now, I first want to talk about the different categories and awards. Now, there were a ton of them, and there were some of them that were, like, in between, briefly mentioned. I'm just going to talk about the ones that stuck out to me. These are mostly the bigger ones. So right at the very beginning, Nier Automata won Best Score, which I think is very well deserved. That game has a phenomenal soundtrack, and I think it's worth listening to just on its own, even outside of the context of the game. Then next up you had Best Narrative, and the game that won was What Remains of Edith Finch. I've literally never even heard of this fucking game, which says something, because I'm pretty engaged with games and stuff. I usually hear about something, and if I don't play it myself, which, I play most games, I usually hear about it, and I have not heard about this game, anything good or bad about it. It won Best Narrative. Nier Automata was nominated for Best Narrative. I personally think it should have won Best Narrative. I don't know if Resident Evil 7 was nominated for this. I think that also deserved some recognition for its narrative. Next up is Best Action Game. Now, I'm not sure what their definition of action game was, because there were games in there like Neo, which that's definitely an action game. That's what I would classify as an action game. Dark Souls, that's an action game. But then they had shooters in there, and then a shooter actually won the category, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Now, I recorded, like, part of a video and then just kind of forgot about it, where I was just casually talking about Wolfenstein, the New Colossus. I actually played and beat the game about 2 weeks ago at this point. I did not care for the game very much at all. I thought the narrative was actually the weakest part of the game. I thought the narrative was kind of terrible. I thought it was childish. I thought the characters were really bad. And I loved the first game, and I thought, if this was the first game, it'd be like, yeah, okay, I understand that, because I thought the first game was excellent. I thought it had a good narrative, great characters. Second game, not feeling it. I think the narrative is by far the weakest part of Wolfenstein, the New Colossus, and I don't condone it being in this section. Best Art Direction went to Cuphead. Fantastic, well-deserved, makes perfect sense. I don't think most people would argue with this one, so it gets a mark of approval from me. And then Cuphead also took the Best Indie Game of the Year award. I think that's also very logical, very well-deserved, so yet another mark of approval. Then we had a new category called Best Ongoing Game. Now, I think this is actually a very good idea, and while I don't take these awards all too seriously, I don't know how much weight a game award carries, but I at least give them credit for coming up with a good new category here. Now, for some reason, Destiny 2 was in Best Ongoing Game, and, like, I guess, but Destiny 2, if this was 2018, okay, but Destiny 2 came out this year, so I don't see how that makes much sense. And what won was Overwatch, which also, I did not know this, it also won Game of the Year last year, which is fucking nuts to me. Now, I played a assload of Overwatch. I played like 400 hours of Overwatch, maybe 300 hours of Overwatch. So, like, I'm not oblivious to the game. I'm not, like, hating on the game blindly. I've played Overwatch. I've been there. I've been in the trenches. I've gotten my hands dirty in Overwatch in competitive. And I think that this game-winning best ongoing game is fucking crazy, especially considering the state of Overwatch. I think if anything, Overwatch is in a dire situation right now. When I stopped playing the game, they had the whole dive meta thing going on with like Winston being the most important hero of any team composition, and the game was just not fun. It's just straight up not fun. I don't think they add new content to it quickly enough, and the community is one of the worst I've ever seen in my life in any competitive game. I would say it is actually worse than even Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which is another game notorious for a very toxic competitive community. So I think that Overwatch should not have won best ongoing game. I was actually expecting it to go to Warframe. Now Warframe, I actually did start playing Warframe. I gave it a try. I think I'm going to go deeper into it now that Destiny 2 has kind of been like a little bit of a disappointment, not so much to do there. So I'm going to go back to Warframe and play more of that. But I expected it to win because it just had that Plains of Eidolon expansion come out, this huge transformative expansion. And Warframe has been a huge success story because I remember when it was coming out, it was like one of the initial games on PS4, like a free-to-play game, and it had great visuals, but like the game itself was bad, and it's transformed so much. It's gained such a huge player base and stuff. I thought that deserved the award, and also Rainbow Six Siege was nominated as well, and I think that could have got the award and made sense as well. So then there was this new category called Best Student Game, and the idea here being to find, presumably, I guess, college students and see game projects from those kids who are working towards degrees and stuff like that, and give them some recognition for their work, and, you know, who's gonna, these names, or, you know, they'll come back in the future and be big names in the industry, I guess. I think that has good intentions, and they had, the panel was like Vince Zampella, Hideo Kojima, people like that. Oh yeah, Todd Howard was in there. Everyone's Mr. Skyrim was in there. And this panel came together and they picked one of these games. And then the guy came up to get it. And if I can find a picture of this, I'm recording this right after the show finished, but if I can find a picture of this, I'll try to slip it in. But if you watched it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not trying to insult anyone, but like student game, I don't know, I just thought the implication was a little bit different than the guy who came to accept the award, but, you know, whatever, congratulations. Then the Games for Impact Award went to Hellblade, the AAA, you know, visually AAA game, but it was like kind of a shorter game at 4 hours, and I believe the price was like $30 or $40. It wasn't a $60 game. I've heard mixed things about that game. Personally, haven't played it myself. I don't really know if I intend to either. You know I sound like a broken record, but I would have liked to see Nier Automata win this. Maybe Persona 5 as well. I think both those games were not nominated for this category, but I think they would have made sense in it. But, you know, whatever. Then Hellblade picked up another award for Best Performance. And, you know, again, I have not played the game, so I cannot judge what the performance was like in that. But, you know, I don't know what else I would have picked for that. I don't have too strong an opinion on that. Then you had Best Direction, and Zelda Breath of the Wild won that. And, like, okay, I guess I like the game. I like Zelda Breath of the Wild, but, like, Best Direction, I don't know. I think Resident Evil 7 would have been a good fit for this. I guess I'm just not really a fan of how a game like Zelda and then like Hellblade, how they won so many awards in different categories, and I just think that there should be a little bit more diversity in that. Then finally, the last award was Game of the Year, of course. The nominees were Horizon Zero Dawn, Zelda, Persona 5, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, and Super Mario Odyssey. Now, I personally can't fucking believe that Horizon Zero Dawn is actually on this list for Game of the Year. I played the game, I reviewed it, I thought it was a good game. Game of the Year material, no fucking way, get the hell out of here. And I think it was also nominated for like Best Narrative, which is nuts, again, nuts to me. I think the narrative was weak in that game. That game stood out to me for its, you know, its gameplay and its visuals, not for narrative. And then PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, it's kind of weird for that to be on there. I don't know if that should be on there. It's an early access game. You know, it's really fun. I've played 286 hours of the game. I like the game. I love playing it with my friends, but it's early access. It's broken as hell. It runs like shit on a 1080 Ti, mind you. Yeah, I just don't know if that should be on the list. The winner here was Zelda Breath of the Wild. I out of this list, if you would have given me this list, I would have guessed that as well. It would be between Zelda and Mario in terms of what I would have predicted, and I think that's acceptable. Definitely not my game of the year. In the top 5 for sure, but game of the year, not for me. Alright, so we're done with that. Let me get to the announcements. I'm not going to mention every announcement. I'm just going to mention the ones that I thought were important for me personally, and probably for you guys too. There was a lot of stuff in there that's just nonsense games that no one gives a fuck about. But the first one that I saw was a new game from the creators of Firewatch. Campo Santo, I believe, is the developer. Looks very similar to Firewatch, except this time around you actually have a human being physically with you, and you're in like, it looked like, I think it was Egyptian tombs. They were like in the Great Pyramids or something like that. Now, I'm not falling for this one again. I gave Firewatch like a 5.5 out of 10. I thought it was really disappointing in a lot of regards. So, if you're into Firewatch, check this out. Looks like more of the same stuff. In terms of like the gameplay, like the way they were throwing the rope and stuff like that looked identical to Firewatch. So it's just more of that if you're into that. Then they had a big thing for a new Zelda DLC. It looked like a pretty significant, beefy DLC, and it's actually a prequel to Breath of the Wild. So this is interesting, and it also came out right now. It came out during the show, so this should be cool. I can't wait to dig into that. Looks like fun. And then there's this little interesting tidbit. This was not even, I don't think it was an announcement. I think it was actually an advertisement, but it had information that I have never heard before. The Star Wars Battlefront Season 2 is coming out on the 13th of this month, I believe it said. And it's coming with a Last Jedi map. You're getting Finn as a hero, and you're getting Captain Phasma as a hero. But then it also had this thing about how it's going to continue the campaign, and then it had like Iden Versio flying a fighter jet or whatever the fuck they fly in those. They fly spaceships. They don't fly fighter jets. But she's flying her like an X-wing. That's it. That's what it's called. She's flying her X-wing, and she's like old as shit, and it's taking place in the Last Jedi era, presumably. So this is super interesting, and I'm working on my review for Star Wars Battlefront a little bit late, but I still want to make it. And I'm criticizing heavily the story and how it just kind of ends, and they said it's a story that spans, the two eras of Star Wars, and then it actually ends abruptly right when it gets to that next era of Star Wars, so it's actually continuing. This is a huge surprise to me. I don't know what's going on there. That should be very interesting to check out. Then we got a surprise announcement. It was a surprise to me. Bayonetta 3 is on the way, and it's in development for Nintendo Switch, in addition to Bayonetta 1 and 2, which are also making their way onto Nintendo Switch before then. This is surprising to me because Bayonetta 2 was a Wii U exclusive, and because of that, I can't imagine that it did well in terms of sales. So Nintendo is willing to, yet again, fund this game. So that's, good on Nintendo for doing that. Bayonetta is probably like my least favorite like Platinum game. I'm not a huge Bayonetta fan, but this is certainly cool, and on the Switch should be a lot of fun. Then you've got the Media Molecule game Dreams. This is fascinating to me because Dreams was announced like, my goodness, like 3 years ago. It feels like it was a really long time ago, and then it was just like a trailer or two, and you never hear anything about it, never see anything about what the gameplay is going to be like. Now, Media Molecule, they made Little Big Planet 1 and 2, in addition to Tearaway on the PS Vita, and then Tearaway went on to be like a PS4 game. They like kind of reworked it, remastered it for PS4, because it did have some features that were unique to the Vita. You had to use the back touchscreen, the camera, stuff like that wouldn't have worked on the PS4. Now, I think this game looks like shit, to be completely honest. I'm not a huge Media Molecule fan. They're definitely different, but for me, it's not in a good way. And then here's the thing. They say this game's coming out in 2018, so I can't wait to see how this game does. It could spell the end of Media Molecule, because they've been spending a lot of time, a lot of manpower on this game, so I'm very curious to see how it turns out and how it does critically and commercially. Now here's the big ticket item, the reason I even bothered tuning in to the Game Awards this year. The man himself, Hideo Kojima, with Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus in tow, came out to show new footage of his upcoming PlayStation 4 exclusive game, Death Stranding. Now this trailer, I was expecting gameplay. I'm going to be honest. I'm one of those like believers in Kojima. I really thought that this game was like way further along in development than a lot of people think it is. And Still hard to tell on that. Maybe I could be wrong, but we got an 8-minute long trailer. That's long as hell. This trailer very much confirms that this game is a sci-fi game. It's not taking place in like current day. And when the trailer started out, I began to be concerned because it seemed like it was just going to be, like a stereotypical Hollywood sci-fi horror movie, like Alien Isolation is, and I'm like, oh man, that's not what I wanted to see. But then the shit goes insane. He's teleporting between different realities, different places. There's a part where the camera goes into Norman Reedus's mouth and then goes down into his stomach, and he's got the fetus is in his stomach. It's insane. And the other thing that this trailer confirmed for me, besides that the game's going to be insane, is that it is still very much a horror game. Like the first 2 minutes of the trailer very strongly indicate that this is a horror game at its core. You've got these strange, almost celestial beings. They're like shadows. You can't see them when they walk. They leave handprints with oil on them in the ground. This is black, oily goop on the ground, and you can't breathe when they come around. And then the one guy is on the ground. He starts twitching like Lisa from PT, which is interesting. It's like he's almost possessed. And then the other guy, hands start coming out of the ground like Dante's Inferno or something and pulling him down. And, the other guy gets pulled up into the air and he's flying. And then Norman Reedus they got the fetus with them. They've got the fetus that Guillermo del Toro had in the second trailer inside that sci-fi looking jar. They have it, these guys, and they look like they're almost like on a Mars mission with like a rover or something. But then the guy gives the jar to Reedus, and he takes the jar, and it seems like this fetus in the jar is some kind of way to be immune to these celestial beings or something like that. I don't know. This trailer just came out. I'm probably going to watch it like 25 times and try to figure out what's going on in it. But this game, it looks immense to me. And then there's narration from Norman Reedus about the Big Bang, and then there's a second bang. So this is kind of like some kind of cataclysmic event makes the Earth uninhabitable to humans, and maybe this second race, this shadow race, comes to take the place of humanity on Earth or something like that. A lot of people are like, oh, this game's just being weird for the sake of being weird. And I think that's a fair criticism, because that's something that I find myself saying about stuff, but I have full faith in this. I think this is finally Hideo Kojima. The Metal Gear Solid series is crazy, but it's still within the confines of this is espionage, this is military stuff. This is completely unhinged. Like, he's just doing whatever the fuck feels right to him, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I expect this game to be like 2001: A Space Odyssey for video games. I really do have that much faith in it. And the one thing, this game, even if you think it's just weird for the sake of being weird, you have to give it credit for being different. I mean, this is truly something different. And then I've got two last things to quickly cover. First is PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, which had a huge presence at this event. They came out and showed the new desert map, which I think they said is going to be on the test server for the next 4 hours. So by the time you watch this video, it's already off the test server. I'm not going to try it out because it's late as hell and I want to go to sleep. But that new desert map is coming. I honestly thought that the desert map would already be here by now, back when they announced it a long time ago. I thought we'd be waiting for like the winter map by now, but desert map's coming. And so the wording they used is that the game is leaving early access on PC on the 20th, I think. It's fully releasing on the 20th, and that must mean that the desert map also comes out that day officially with the game, so that's something to look forward to. There was some Xbox One stuff there, some new dates and stuff like that, but I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck about that. I don't play on Xbox anymore, so sorry if you play on Xbox. And then finally, Metro Exodus, some new stuff from that. I'm super pumped about Metro Exodus. It's my second most anticipated game, right there behind Death Stranding. Those Metro games are fantastic, and this game looks like it's just going to be fantastic like the past two. The trailer wasn't really anything new. It's just some different footage. I think it's actually a worse trailer than what they showed at E3, the Xbox showed at E3, because Xbox actually showed gameplay of it, so I thought that was a little bit better. But the theme of this game, they're doing something different here, which is nice. And I think that the first game was very survival, it was very lonely, and then the second game was like a huge, crazy, like very driven, fast-paced cinematic kind of thing, and then this game looks like it's going to be more like Stalker. But yeah, I don't really have much more to say about Metro Exodus or the VGAs in general. So if you watch the VGAs. Let me know what you thought about especially about the winners of the categories and stuff like that. I'd like to know what people think of that stuff. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter who wins that stuff. Who fucking cares? But I just like to comment on it and give my 2 cents on it. And let me know what you thought of that Death Stranding trailer. And as always, thank you for watching.